All right, welcome to another Purpose and Power Talk, Conversations on Transformation. I'm here with Deanna Pinto. She is the founder and CEO of Learning Matters, Inc. She works with children ages 6 to 17 as a student success strategist. And her mission is to empower, educate, and promote self-expression, all while increasing self-esteem, confidence, and independence in each unique individual. Deanna, I think that's a really beautiful mission. I would love to have you share a little bit more about what that looks like in action and on a day-to-day basis. Why don't you share with us now?
Absolutely. Hi, Vince. Thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here with you and
Of
to
course.
share this conversation with your community. So, a student success strategist, the word success in our country has been taken into a sort of performance-driven platform. And so my mission really is to help each child understand who they are as a learner, who they are as a human being, and then merge those two together to help them figure out what their purpose is. Because school is not just a place to go and learn, but it's a place where children have an opportunity to every day discover something new about themselves and others. And so as we're raising human beings, I want them to be able to understand self, understand others, and succeed in their academics.
That's wonderful. I would love for you to give us an example of an individual transformation you've had the opportunity to facilitate and witness in someone you've worked
Oh,
with.
oh my goodness, so many. So one of my favorites, I work with children from the ages of 6, sometimes 7, all the way to 17, and sometimes some college students that are going through we call it a little bit of a first semester crisis and need some assistance. Some of the transformations that probably one of my favorite is from this little boy that I met about 3 years ago. He had arrived from Venezuela
Mm.
and unfortunately had suffered uh, verbal abuse in a pre-K center
Mm.
that he had that his parents had placed him in. And so he had completely shut down the concept of learning. He paired an associated learning with something negative, right? It was a negative experience. So when I started working with him, he wasn't speaking the language, he wasn't reading, he was doing really poorly in school. And right away, the work that had to be done was not an academic work. And a lot of the times, professionals in the education arena will go straight for the academics. Well, if this student is having issues with math, we're going to target math. If this student has trouble with reading, we're going to target reading.
Mm.
If he's an international student, we'll place him on ESOL. And so it's very, I call it a very band-aid approach, right? Where we're simply covering the symptoms, but not getting to the root of the problem.
Mm.
And the root of his problem was trauma. He had experienced trauma.
Mm.
And so education, learning, a classroom had simply become a place that was adverse, right? So we put professionals in place. We had a psychologist in place to help him and facilitate just the therapeutic process.
Mm.
And alongside, I came in with the academic tools to help him develop his confidence, to be able to express himself, to really empower him to understand that learning was powerful, that learning
Mm.
was a positive thing. And you should see this kid now, right? 3 years later, this kid is running his classroom, getting honors every semester, every quarter. The mom is super involved in academics, which I love. It's a family affair. It's changed the family dynamic. So it's not just the individual, but it's the individual and everyone that is part of
Mm.
that kid's lives, right?
Mm.
So that's what the work is really about, is identifying the root problem and then really wrapping this kid around services that are necessary for him to succeed.
This is beautiful. Really, really love that. I especially understand the importance of focusing on causes rather than effects or symptoms. And that you spoke, that really just blesses my soul. Immediately, I saw like all these kids I went to school with that were in the special student program. That they were kind of like isolated from others. And I ended up being involved with gangs, and actually a gang in the school starting in middle school. And the members that I was connected with were mostly in that program. And when I learned about their family life, and as I got closer to them, I learned that, yeah, they grew up in a lot of abusive homes, and they were just really devastated. And I did too. So fortunately, I still was able to do really good at learning all through and middle school. But I could see how like some of those kids had more like physical abuse like early on in their childhood. Mine didn't show up till about 10, 11 when my stepfather entered the picture. They had this stuff going on when they were like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, and they were just getting physically beaten, and it affected their ability to learn, impeded their ability to learn. But they were brilliant kids, like they were super creative. And what you said about this kid, like people were trying to address mathematics, or they're trying to address, some kind of learning outlet that he's not showing up or performing in. And there's no fix for that at that level, because the underlying cause is this psycho-emotional conditioning, the pain, the trauma, the hurt. And while that's there, it's chronically stimulated inside of someone who's dealing with that, and it impedes their ability to think rationally and intellectually. That logical side of the brain is dulled until that area of the emotional and psycho-emotional profile of pain and trauma is actually addressed, confronted, embraced, and there's a relearning of safety inside of the physical body even. And now that happened for that child, it's clear that he was able to totally improve not only his own life, but you're saying it impacted everyone around him. So that was a beautiful story. And I love that we really see that there's a cause-effect relationship that's manifest, it's visible, it's understandable, but it's not necessarily a common approach. So thanks for bringing that to our attention.
Of course, absolutely. And that's the thing with children, is that they don't possess language in the way that we do. So many times, one of the things that I like to address also is social emotional learning, because just understanding emotion, right? Understanding the waves of emotions that they can potentially feel through the day, and sometimes not being able to fully verbalize what they're experiencing. So I think it's my job as an educator and an adult to really help them put that into context, and then get the team around them for them to just thrive, because every child has that potential. There's not one child. So many come to me with a diagnosis or a misdiagnosis of ADHD, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had an interview recently with Ron Shawali, and he said it plainly. It's a conversation of convenience, right? And so for me, it's really important to empower my kids to make sure that they understand who they are and what they're capable of. And once they do that, they really develop the confidence to go anywhere they choose, because at the end of the day, it's their life, right? And they get to really step into their purpose. And that's my mission.
Wow, there's just so much parallel in what you do and what I've been doing with my clients, except you're working with the younger children to teens. But I mean, the principles you're operating from are absolutely spot on in my own 20 years of doing this work. So I'm just emphasizing like how on point you are. And I really get the contribution you are to human beings. I mean, you're not just impacting the children, you're impacting society, our entire world ultimately, because these individuals have a chance that they might not have ever had it otherwise, because you're actually working from the inside out and you're really addressing the real issues. So I applaud you for that, and thank you. I would now love for you to share a little bit about your own personal challenges and struggles. You were dealing with depression and you had some limiting
Yes.
beliefs. Why don't you just walk us through that quickly, but intimately if you can, like how it started, like what were the causes, and what did you do to turn that around?
Well, one of the reasons why I stepped into the line of work that I have today is because I really stepped into my purpose by figuring out and having awareness about where I had come from. And as a young child, I moved around quite a bit. I lived in Cape Verde Islands. I lived in Portugal. I lived here in the United States for a little bit. So I went through a lot of transition. And as a young child and later a teenager, I didn't have the language or the ability. I didn't feel seen or heard. And so I was literally just going with the punches. So imagine for a teenager, just getting acclimated to a new culture and wanting to belong, to feel accepted, to feel loved while thriving academically. And one of the things that I experienced very deeply was depression, but I didn't know at the time what it meant or what the word even was. In my household, it was a taboo to talk about mental illness, right? So I didn't have the vocabulary to express my own emotions. So a lot of the times I just literally suppressed. You mentioned earlier, what is the difference between controlling your emotions and suppressing your emotions? And I am the pure example, or I was, of that person who suppressed emotions. A lot of things came up for me, and I couldn't deal with it. There was a lot of anxiety around performing well in school, about making friends, about being accepted. So it became a really difficult point until I hit college and I began to learn about myself. So in college, I was pretty much forced. I don't think I was encouraged. I was forced to take a class called Student Success. And in that class, I literally had to go through an entire semester of learning about self, learning about my emotions, learning about my personality, learning about my own learning style, writing, learning to read, learning to write, learning to speak. I mean, you name it, right? I had to learn it. So that opened a different avenue for me where I realized, oh, wow, I can actually learn. I am not constricted by my past. I'm not defined by my high school career, which was terrible because I didn't have the support that I really craved and needed from my own teachers and the society that I lived in, which at the time was Portugal. So when I got that support in college, I understood, wow, I'm not all of these things that I believed, right? I had all these limiting beliefs about not being good enough, about not being smart enough, about not being capable. I worried about my future. Will my parents have to take care of me? Will I ever get a job? Will I ever graduate college? So those things were really, really heavy on me. And so two things happened. I discovered that course and it changed my life because I soared as a student. I went on to get my bachelor's in psychology, later my master's in international development, and nothing could stop me because I understood what happened here and I understood what happened also in my heart, and I could regulate. So that allowed me to put it into practice and say, well, hold on a second. If I can do it, then everyone can do it. And all of our children suffering from all of the anxiety of performing well academically can probably do it too. And they can learn about self. So that's the transition that happened in me stepping into my purpose. I really believe that my purpose chose me after going through all of the hardships that I experienced growing up internally. The internal turmoil that I experienced. Just the realization that I was not the past, that I was not my feelings, that I could choose at any moment in time everything that would happen to me. That was just blew me away, right? So I was able to then inject that into my practice, and I still do it daily.
Wow. Totally impressed. Not only by your journey, your transformation, but your understanding and articulation. The way that you have come to understand yourself from head to heart, and how you were impacted by your experiences, and understanding that your learning style, your personality type, and how to really enhance your abilities in life and in education through that success, what was it, strategy,
Success.
student success program, the student success program, right?
Yes, program.
Yeah. So that program really empowered you. And then now you are like inspired to really, hey, I want to give that back to others. I know what's possible. And so that's what you're up to today. So I'd love to hear a little bit more. I mean, you're doing a lot. Maybe you can expand on what you're doing in this program. What are some of the bigger objectives and goals of the program, or maybe even of yourself?
I want to change the world. I want to make sure that every single child out there knows that anything is possible. And I love the word possibility, right? Because it doesn't shut the door to anything. It allows us to really consider the options that we have. And for the world that we live in, that's really one of the biggest challenges we have right now as I talk to parents about what's going on in their household. There's a lot of societal pressures of how a family should operate and what a child should be doing and how many sports they should be playing and what grades they should be getting, right? And although those are there's certain parameters of success, my sole mission is really to encourage every child to understand where they are in their journey. And I want them to understand that they are a unique human. My grandmother is Cuban, and she always talked every time she wanted to tell me about differences. She would say, "Look, we have 5 fingers, and they're all of them are different, right?" And that's the truth about children and teens, is that they have a unique composition, they have a unique compass, they have unique emotional needs, and I want to address them. I want parents to understand, it's a concept of conscious parenting. You are not your child, right? And so your life shouldn't be a mirror of that child. To the contrary, I always believe that children are lessons to the parents. And I still tell my father this. I said, God just really brought me into your life because there were lessons that you still had to learn, and lessons of healing and lessons of growth and transformation. And so we have a lot of conversations about that. And I'm in my 30s, right? And I'm still having these conversations with my father. So I always imagine what is possible for a family, right? How can we heal and really stop generational patterns? You have stopped a generational pattern by having your own transformation. And now you can change the life of your family. Your family will then change the life of communities. And so really that is a ripple effect that I want to contribute to, is for every single parent to understand that, one, they get to contribute to their children's lives. Two, that their children's are unique. They're unique individuals with unique needs that with the right tools, support, and love and consistency, they can do anything they set their mind to, right? I've had kids, I cannot even begin to tell you how many kids we have that come to us with a diagnosis of ADHD. And sometimes the symptoms are, to me, more of a realization that the child is experiencing toxic stress rather than an actual disorder that it's internally. So how can we shift the conversation in our education system to incorporate these larger conversations, right? Are we doing everything we possibly can as humans? Are we growing ourselves enough to be able to then contribute to a child's life? Because they just have to be poured into. They don't come into this world knowing everything, or maybe they do. I don't know. That's debatable, right?
They definitely know something we ought to pay attention to.
I think so. I think they're more my teachers than I am theirs. They definitely do teach me a lot. So in my company, everything is really customized. We have different programs. We have study skills programs where kids learn strategies on how to learn more effectively. So we call it studying smarter, not harder. And so they get to understand their own patterns of learning and the patterns of textbooks and writing and reading and note taking, time management, goal setting, all of those important foundations, right, for us humans to operate successfully in our society. And then we also do coaching. We have coaching for parents. Most parents come to me with their kid being the problem, but sometimes the parent requires a little bit of support so they can understand how their own limiting beliefs and their own expectations are affecting the child's performance or the child's health, right? And we customize every single coaching session. So it's very, very individualized. I take a lot of pride in not offering a lot of group experiences, because I do believe that each child has a unique sort of platform that they have to get on, and then we get to work with them one-on-one and just offer the entire family all of the tools that they need. Sometimes they need more than coaching and we are able to refer out. Sometimes they stay in house and then we're able to address the emotional needs, the academic needs, social needs.
There's just so much. I'm going to recap a little bit of what I would like to highlight and what you're sharing. One, the conversation that parents and the educational system will be participating in, where they get that there are causes that we get to look at rather than identifying and labeling symptoms like ADHD. I
Mm-hmm.
also find that these, it's convenient for those who benefit from the sale of certain medications, right? Of course, they're not really trying to support this conversation. It's bad for business. But in the work that I've done, I've worked with a lot of people dealing with mental illness. I was a volunteer at a recovery center, and got to serve the mental health patients every week on a Friday. They would come in along with those struggling with addiction and drug and alcohol addiction. And it's amazing, as I got into conversation with them and they were sharing with me their various diagnoses, I was just like, let me learn a little bit about how things were for you growing up and what was happening. And that there's always some story in the background, some incompletion, some disintegrated aspect of the self that
Mm-hmm.
is clearly visible to me in my years of doing work with myself, with my own journey and walk, and then of working with others for almost 20 years too. About 19 years, people started showing up in my world, and I immediately started to share with them what I was discovering about me as I was diving in to see, like, why did I end up as a criminal and a drug dealer, drug user, and almost dead? Well, I had to dig in and had to find all of the reasons and the causes, because medications were not an option for me. Drugs were not an option for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to deal with self. And I discovered that these causes can be dealt with. And you're highlighting that, you're emphasizing that, you're doing work around it. I think that's really beautiful. That's one thing I wanted to make mention to. The other thing that you said that was really great was working with parents in relationship to their child's growth and development. Because I've also had a lot of parents come to me because they want their child fixed, or their child is on drugs, or the communication's not working. And I would say 100% of the time, they always address it like it's something wrong with the child.
Mm-hmm.
And my initial conversation is 100% of the time, well, let me have a little conversation with you. I listen to what they have to say, and I take in everything that they're saying, I measure it, and then I start asking them about their relationship with each other, if they're a parent couple, if they're divorced, their relationship with each other, their communication style. I start digging into their life, and then ultimately it ends up with, hey, I would happily coach your child, but the only way I'm going to coach your child is if I can work with you first, because I really got to have you enrolled and partnered in this, because you're going to need to understand what they're going through. I'm going to educate you, and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to give you some communication styles to really engage your son or daughter or your children, because there may be some barriers that were created unknowingly, unwittingly, maybe
Mm-hmm.
unintentionally, but we can actually dissolve those barriers and at least rebuild the bridge between you and them. So when you
Yes.
mentioned that, my heart is near and dear to that, and really getting parents and children to work together, parent team conversations, I think, are important to
Yeah.
facilitate, because there is a barrier. There's a lack of understanding of how to do that from a parent's perspective. And the children are also lacking how to relate to their parents. They don't have those skill sets to really
Mm-hmm.
listen and speak that complete circuits in the conversation. And what ends up happening is they start to separate, all because communication skills are just poor a
The
lot of the
power
time.
struggle. Yeah.
And it becomes a power struggle at that point, because you're not hearing me, and it's like that, and it's like, and then I'm just going to give up because it doesn't work.
Yeah. Conversations without judgment, right? I
Yes.
always tell the parents, you have to come in with an open heart into a conversation, because you never know if your child doesn't feel safe opening up, and safety starts very early on, right? The children drop a little bit of droplets around their upbringing, right? And they're testing their parents to see whether or not this bigger person can actually be trusted with their feelings, with their thoughts, with their actions, with their behavior. And so if parents demonstrate that they can be trusted, then parents have a big problem in their hands, because you'll get a teenager who completely shuts down. And we know for a fact that teenagers it's almost like they have two separate brains, right? They have the upstairs brain and the downstairs brain. So they haven't been able to fully connect between, that's the called a period of integration, right? So that they're not adults, but they're not children, and they're trying to find their place in the world. So if they're not able to come to parents in safety, and just really express themselves without judgment, then we get a lot of problems. So just like you said, it's really being able to understand what's been happening at the core, because how many emotions could potentially are being suppressed in that individual, that they have not been able to fully communicate with the parent. And sometimes it's a really easy fix if both parties are willing, open, and accountable.
Absolutely. I'll just share my own experience of what you're saying to just illustrate how perfect what you're saying is about, my own journey as a child in middle school began with the summer of my stepdad showing up in the world of my life and basically beating on my mother. They were drinking, and it was like my mother just disappeared. And I witnessed that. I was trying to protect her. I made some critical decisions against myself, that I wasn't strong enough, that I never would be, that I failed, and I couldn't get my mother to leave the relationship. So I really just turned on me. I wasn't big enough. I wasn't strong enough. I was comparing myself to my real dad, or even to what my stepdad was like, and like that I should be like them, but I felt so small, so weak, so helpless. And I cast a verdict against myself of death, basically. It was a death sentence against me that manifested in 1999 when I overdosed. And that's what I realized. But I didn't know how to speak to any of that. I was in school. I was empty. I was dead. There was no safety in communication at home, for sure. My real dad, good man, but not good in communication. Strong Italian style character, and just wasn't able to really speak. And so I just was so internalized. And then in school, I was the same way. And what that ended up manifesting in, here's a problem, a real problem: bullying. I started getting bullied like crazy because I was like an inverted magnet for pain and suffering, because I was holding so much in myself. And that led to the only solution I could think of to escape this problem was joining a gang when I was invited. Because then I felt, hey, well, that will at least make me powerful. I'll be connected. I'll be with the popular, powerful kids that everyone looks up to and no one messes with. And that was like my only option at the time. That's all I could see in the narrow window of my consciousness. And so that's what happened to me, because there was no outlet. Now I work with other kids who don't have that outlet at home. They don't have the ability to express themselves. Their feelings aren't heard. They shouldn't cry, or they're just trying to be fixed or changed, or they're getting fixed or changed by their parents every time they reveal something. And the kid doesn't feel like it ever really fully processed whatever was there. And so then drugs and alcohol become an outlet for them instead, because there's an escape from that internal gnawing of, I'm not complete in whatever it is that's going on inside. And I don't feel integrated. I don't feel whole. I feel kind of empty. I feel disconnected, and I just want to get rid of that. And so they'll either go to uppers or downers, one way or the other.
It's either to feel or not to feel, right?
Exactly. And so it's just awesome that you're bringing this to light, and the work that you do. I'd love to understand more about your company. You operate individually. You have a team. How does this work?
So we have a team. The company has two components. We have a tutoring component where we offer just academic services, and within those tutoring, the special thing about tutoring is that most people, it's an easy access to working with a family, because most of the times, again, families come in for the symptom, right? My child is failing. And so we have this precious opportunity to add coaching to our tutoring sessions, right? So during our tutoring sessions, our kids have the ability to work with me as a coach. And we also have a transformational coach. She works specifically with parents and children who need the one-on-one support. We have a program that's coming up soon. When I say soon, next year, that we're bringing something really yummy together to really support kids and families into just being their higher self, to really stepping into their purpose and thriving and becoming, and stepping into what God has really created them to be, right? So the company really has those two components. We offer clinics during the year. So I will have clinics on reading, clinics on writing, clinics on test taking. So I don't forget the market, right? I don't forget the needs that some people have. Sometimes children do have, let's say, executive functioning issues where they have a hard time initiating a task, or they have a hard time understanding process, or sometimes it's a working memory issue where they are not able to hold certain amount of information in their head. So we do address those academic needs, but we use the tutoring process to introduce coaching as an add-on service so that the kid can step into their greatness, I call it.
That's amazing. And so your ideal clients are parents with children who are struggling academically or even psychologically, emotionally.
Yeah.
Whatever they think the emphasis is.
Yeah, sometimes the children are actually, and here's the misconception, that a child that receives tutoring or receives coaching, it's not smart or it's misbehaving. Sometimes it's neither. Sometimes I'll get students who perfectly have straight A's in school, right? But they're socially awkward. They have the inability to express themselves. They're not organized, that they have trouble communicating their needs. They have trouble self-regulating. So those are kids that we serve as well, and we support and help them sort of come out of their shell. And then we have kids who are sometimes struggling in school because there's a deeper issue that needs to be addressed, or sometimes they just don't understand the way that the material is being provided to them. And then we support them in those areas too.
God, so amazing. I really, really love what you do. It sounds like then you're really, well, let me ask you this. Do you have a program that you take them through? I get that it's custom. A lot of what you do is very custom oriented, right? It's got to be designed for that individual
Yeah.
or that family.
Yeah.
What does it look like? Is there like a span of a certain number of weeks typically, or does it really vary, like just depending on the
Well,
situation?
each case is unique. We have a program that we're taking to, it's called Teen Untangled. So for teenagers and even for younger ones, we have a program that's called Untangled. And Untangled just means that, right? There's a human being that comes into our space that needs support in different areas. And so we take our program and say, okay, what does this child need? It's almost, think of it as don't you love customized subscription boxes where you get to actually pick what you want? So that's exactly what we do. We get a discovery call, we speak with a parent, we understand exactly what the need is, and then we make recommendations. Sometimes it's to go through the parenting untangled for the parent so that they can actually understand self. Sometimes it's just for the child to go through our curriculum and be able to then understand themselves, right? And we add on tutors to be able to support them academically. So it really depends. And we talk about wellness on one end. So we're looking at different areas of social emotional learning, and then we're looking at different areas of just pure academics like study skills. So we merge the two, we build it into a curriculum, and then we take out the pieces that are relevant to that particular student, and we then implement it. During the summer, we have partnered with the YMCA here in Miami. This summer, we had a beautiful turnout for Teen Untangled, Compass to Wellness. And literally for 8 weeks, we took about 10 girls through their own personal journey. So it was a safe space where they could reflect on their choices, learn about 8 different areas of wellness, reflect on how they were doing in each of the areas, and then reflect on the choices they got to make afterwards, right? So it was beautiful. So much aha happening in the teenage room. It was amazing. I learned a ton.
I can feel that from you. You just exude joy when you're sharing about that experience. And I really get your passion and how engaged you are. It's a wonderful, beautiful thing. I really also see the holistic approach that you take. It's not a one size fits all. Like, you're really looking at all dimensions. You deal with the academic external issues, so to speak, and then you deal with those internal issues that could be happening. You deal with the parents, you deal with the children, and you work teachers. Like, that's amazing. I really think what you do is profound. I knew only a little bit about it from our previous conversation, but this is so cool, and I would love to help people get in contact with you. How can parents reach you or teachers reach you? Because it sounds like you get to be exposed to that group of teachers that could actually connect you with parents who have children that they notice are struggling, right? And I really feel like your service is super valuable. So what's the best way to contact you so that they can do that?
Absolutely. I love to help these kids blossom. So parents, I love to invite them to a conversation, because a lot can be said on an email or a website, but nothing trumps a conversation. So I invite them to contact me for a discovery call. They can do that through, they can just send me an email. I have a Calendly calendar, but if you kill me right now, I wouldn't be able to tell you the address. But I will give you the email. The email is Deanna, Diana, at learningmattersflorida.com. And set up a time to talk to me. Once my website becomes fully operational, then I will have a form for parents to get in touch with me again. Right now, the forms are inactive, unfortunately, but they can get in touch with me via email and just say discovery.
How about this? Call. Got it. So say discovery call in the email subject, and it's Deanna at Learning Matters Florida.com. The other thing is, we could give them the website, because this could be seen at any point in time in the future. So let's just give the website anyway, and I'll put it in the description as well.
So the website is learningmattersflorida.com.
Perfect.
Don't forget the www.
Yes, of course, of course. So that will all be in the description. So if you're watching this, the links will be in the description to her email and the website. And I would like to just say, Deanna, thank you so much for who you are, what you are doing in the world, the lives that you're changing. And thank you, of course, for being on this show to share yourself. I am touched, I'm inspired, I'm moved, I'm learning from you. I love the articulation. It just expands on the world that I'm so passionate about already. So you're a huge blessing. I look forward to future conversations and collaboration. And if there's anything you'd like to say and express before we leave the show, feel free to do so.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you for shining light, for really having these purposeful conversations, to shining light on topics that are not always comfortable to have, but that allow us an opportunity to think, to reflect, to engage with another human being. So I really want to say thank you for that, for the work that you do, for the transformation that you had, and just being able to touch more lives and touch coaches as well, because you have a really unique purpose, and that's awesome to watch.
Thank you, Deanna. I totally received that acknowledgement, and it's just an honor and a blessing to have you on the show today. Let's keep the conversation alive and going, and I thank you again. Take care.
Thank you, Vince. Bye.